Welcome to Recruit Through the Whistle. No, welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel. They are indeed recruiting through the whistle right now. Texas still trying to get possibly two more pledges today, maybe even a third if a portal guy decides. Longhorns and Steve Sarkisian burning the midnight oil, trying to finish out this recruiting class with a real bang. This episode of On Texas Football, the live stream on Friday, brought to you by Andy Ludicky and MyPerfectFranchise.net. We appreciate him and his sponsorship. Look, CJ, I'm going to let you go down what all is going on in recruiting right now because it's coming down to the wire.
Yeah, absolutely is.
Now,
there we go.
Yeah, you're back. You're live now. Name the players that Texas is still recruiting and what's going on with them right now for today.
Yeah, Aaron Butler out of Calabasas, California, the wide receiver. Texas is, it appears is right down to the nick of things with Washington for that recruitment as well, as we've seen with his father's, public tweeting of his recruitment last night, And then obviously D'Alen Evans, who did not sign with A&M on the initial signing day on Wednesday, is in the communication, in the, kind of on the fence right now between Texas and A&M and what he plans to do. It could be signing today. It could be pushing off. It could be, a whole mix of things for D'Alen Evans. And obviously UTSA edge Trey Moore, who you've been, all over the place, or all on top of, Bobby, with his recruitment. A decision could come as early as this weekend. And Texas and Alabama fighting, toe-to-toe for the talented edge out of UTSA, with San Antonio ties there. So a lot going on, and that does not even include Terry Bussey, the portal wide receiver maybe that Texas could pursue as well, and Alex Foster out of Mississippi as well. So like you said, the midnight oil is burning, and the Texas staff is still hard at work here.
Yeah, they really are. I think that you look at it, and I got a couple things to add to it. Butler has not given a time for his announcement. Let's talk about that because timing is important. D'Alen Evans, we believe, is going to be late afternoon, but no definitive time either. One thing to add on D'Alen Evans, he's talked to Texas coaching staff multiple times today, multiple members of the coaching staff. But, of course, communication remains open with him and Texas A&M as well. So that's not necessarily indicative of where that recruitment's going. And then Trey Moore is trying to decide by this weekend, and we'll see exactly what that means for him in the future right now as well. All right, we're going to take y'all's questions today, talk about recruiting and finishing up this recruiting class. We're also going to talk a little bit of team news. CJ, I wanted you to start. A little surprise in the secondary for the Longhorns, according to you. Tell folks what you're hearing about Texas and the secondary as far as their preparation for Washington.
Yeah, as we know, Texas is very shorthanded in the secondary, specifically at safety, with Jalen Catalon entering the portal. B.J. Allen has departed. Larry Turner Gooden is looking for a new home as well. And despite continuing to practice with the team, Texas is looking to get some guys with on-field experience, more reps in the safety position as they head into the Washington game. Jahdae Barron is a name that was passed on to me this morning in terms of getting reps at safety. I'm not sure if it's going to be a full-time move to safety. I think it's very unlikely. Obviously, we've seen how talented he is by the line of scrimmage. And, with Jahdae, the closer he is to the football, I think is, kind of bringing out the most in him, impact-wise. But he has been getting reps, has been getting time at safety this week in practice. And that, of course, stems from Derek Williams set to miss the first half of the semifinal against Washington due to a targeting call against Oklahoma State. So interesting development, something we'll watch. I think it's a good move. Obviously, Jalen Gilbo has, some experience at star right there. Obviously, when you go into those big packages as well, Maurice Blackwell is more than, capable of playing in that box as well.
Yeah. Interestingly to me, it does give Texas another versatile player to put back there in case Washington's really throwing it well. I will add, don't forget that Jahdae Barron has also played corner.
Yes.
And so he's clearly the high IQ guy in that secondary that they think CJ can manage all of those different position things as well. My take on it is with Derek Williams out, they have to be trained up because you don't want to have to put somebody out there that really hasn't played much in case of emergency. But, pretty typical for them to try to Pete Kwiatkowski and Steve Sarkisian to try to make sure all their bases are covered at this time. All right, we've got time for questions. If y'all want comments, want to talk a little recruiting, you want to talk a little team news before we get going, we're going to get out right. We're going to be done today right at the top of the hour. So it'll go right into 2. Hopefully, Aaron Butler makes his decision in the next 40 minutes, guys. Hopefully that happens. My thinking is right now we don't have a clear time frame on Butler. Evans, I think it's going to be late afternoon. Moore, it sounds like, is going to be this weekend based on what I was told this morning, just to reiterate for everybody as well. Before we get into the questions and discussions, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. That sponsor is Andy Ludicky of myperfectfranchise.net. If you're interested in getting into the franchise game, want to start the new year with a new business, give Andy and his group a call, 404-973-9901, or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's 404-973-9901, andy@myperfectfranchise.net. All right, let's get to some questions, guys, and start talking a little football. Longhorns still favored in this game against Washington. But CJ, the more you think about it, the more you talk with myself, Rod, and other people, and what you're hearing behind the scenes, how do you really see the Texas-Washington game playing out?
It's fun because I think this also was a mindset that not only was in the Texas Tech game, but obviously the Oklahoma State game. When you give Texas some sort of bulletin board material, they come with a chip on their shoulder. And we obviously are aware of, your remarks in terms of Texas Tech getting the job done in Austin, what Joey McGuire has said previously as well in terms of, the whole conference runs through Lubbock and yada, yada, yada. But I think we're looking at it now, and this is just based off of what we've seen the last 2 weeks. Washington has won the Joe Moore Award this past weekend. That goes to the best offensive line in all of college football. Head coach Kalen DeBoer also named the AP National Coach of the Year. We saw what Steve Sarkisian just did to the Big 12 Coach of the Year. I think there's going to be extra focus, extra bulletin board material. That's not been something this team has shied away from, and it's kind of given me that extra confidence, I want to say, in terms of when these guys are set to kick off on the field. Obviously, the game last year, and I've brought this up before, it just didn't feel like a game under Steve Sarkisian that we've seen in the last 3 years. It just didn't have that vibe. Only 3 first-half points. Quinn Ewers threw the ball 47 times, and the running game was non-existent. That complementary balance that he, is so proud of and loves to emphasize about his offense was non-existent. And I don't know, Bobby, if there's been another time like that, maybe TCU in 2022, where you can really point to and say, there just wasn't any sort of balance offensively. And I have to think that you can look back at that game and maybe look at specific players, but the theme overall of what those two teams showed, I think you have to throw them out the window. I think it'll be a completely brand new game. And as a result, I love what Texas has in the front seven. I love what they bring to the table in terms of stopping the run, and also the speed in that front seven, I think, is something that was, a large it was largely missing from last year's game if you watch that back. So I like where Texas is in that front seven, and I think that's the edge that they need going into this game January 1st.
Yeah, here's another one that I want to get to people and make sure people see and know this. This one from Forrest Eldridge. Hey, fellas, has Sark addressed any questions about the DE for Washington? Zach Durfee is his name, that just became eligible, as far as impact or whatnot. He has not addressed that publicly, although privately, I know that the staff is very aware of Zach Durfee and done some recon, etc. That doesn't mean that they necessarily have a game plan or what have you for him, but they're definitely aware of Zach Durfee, etc. And that will be somebody that they're looking for on New Year's Day week. Man, it's just 10 days from today. That's just crazy to me. Texas playing in the national championship playoff a week from Monday. All right, Hector Perez asks, what's the probability we get a commit today? I'm going to go with right at 50-50 because I think Aaron Butler was described to me as 50-50 this morning. D'Alen Evans, I don't really have a great feel for. I mean, he's been committed to A&M for more than a year, but clearly has been attracted to Texas in the last month or so, or last 2 or 3 weeks or so, CJ. And then Trey Moore, if he were to commit today, I think that's a 50-50 proposition right now too. I know a lot of people think that's a shoe-in for Texas, but I'm told that that's not necessarily the case. So add all that together, I'm thinking 50-50. Does that sound right? I mean, we're on pins and needles here. Believe us. I mean, we're waiting for these things to happen. But right now we just don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm no math major here, Bobby. And, when it comes to finding the probability of 3 individual, results, actions, whatever it is, I don't have the math to go in and find the probabilities specifically. But I do like what you said, for these 3 guys who are all nearing decisions, whether it be today or by this weekend, Texas is right in the thick of things. And if you want to go to the specific odds on where Texas is sitting, I think all 3 of them, you got to like the coin flip chances Texas has in all 3. So 50-50 sounds great to me. I think, especially today, action will be happening.
All right. Any word on this from River Oaks Art Society? Any word on Evan Stewart? You had something you texted with him last night. What's going on there?
Yeah, I spoke directly to Evan Stewart this week. He said he has not heard from Texas, and his belief is that they are preparing for the college football playoff, basically. And so, while on paper, again, it makes perfect sense to Texas to pursue Evan Stewart, right now there's not yet been communication in the sense that they want to fully go after Evan at the moment.
I know he has spoken to Alabama, among others. I think Oregon's going to be a team to watch there as well. All right, have some more news and notes here. This one's an interesting from Stoneman. How does the LSU OC Mike Denbrock leaving for Notre Dame affect both Terry Bussey and DeCorian Moore, the junior wide receiver out of Duncanville that is likely one of the state's top handful of prospects for next year? I don't know about Bussey. I have not followed that recruitment closely enough. I think that it'll put all kinds of issues with LSU's commitments for 2025. It's a little bit different when you have a year out to look at it. Not that Moore wasn't going to look around anyways, but Denbrock leaving for Notre Dame. I don't see DeCorian Moore going to Notre Dame, for example. But I do think that the prodigious numbers they put up in Baton Rouge, winning a Heisman Trophy with Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, all those receivers that LSU had, that was probably attractive to just about anybody and everybody that was interested there. With the OC leaving, he actually turned down the same job at A&M, by the way, I'm told. Leaving, you will know later, sooner rather than later, what exactly is going on with Bussey. And then Moore, I still think that's just a year away from signing altogether right now. All right. Have some time for more questions. Please get them in. This is the Friday afternoon live stream. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel. Rod Babers is on his way to his parents' house in Houston. He told me to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. He'll be on a little bit later tonight. We got a couple of pre-recorded shows that we're going to do for you guys. Make sure you guys get some content as the weekend goes on and can be able to be around the team. I'm not sure if everybody heard his and Bob Shipley's football theory last night, but that was good. A really, really good conversation you might want to check out as well. All right, let's keep going here, CJ, if you got a second, and we'll see what we can do as far as some more questions about the Longhorns. Here we go. MJF, who would Trey Moore take snaps from? We have a lot of talented young DEs that either played last year or are up and coming. That's a good question. They're recruiting him at Buck. Now, Buck is the strong side boundary, not the strong side, the weak side boundary edge. So that's that part. It is currently manned by Ethan Burke, backed up by Justice Finkley, although Justice Finkley was the primary backup on both sides. He was the first man off the bench, no matter who it was for. My take on that is I think they're going to try to do the same as they did this year and give 30 snaps to 4 different guys.
Yeah.
That's my take. So it's not really that he's taking it away from. If it's anybody, it might be somebody like Colton Vasek, Jamon Tapp, although I think Tapp is getting ready to really come on this year. You have any thoughts on that about who he might take reps away from?
Yeah, no, I think it won't necessarily be a taking away. It'll just be more of a split. And I think this is beneficial in the sense that we see it with the defensive line and at the safeties. When these guys are on the field as long as they are, especially when you're rushing the passer, it wears you down. I mean, you get exhausted. There are times when you look around and see, guys like Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy who are on the field for 5, 6, 7 plays in a row at times, kind of huffing and puffing. That's a tough thing to do in the trenches when you're also going up against a guy that's 330 pounds continually over and over again. And I think this is one of those things, Bobby, where you talk about the depth and the importance of getting good talent on the field that can create impactful plays. This is just another step in that. You want to have that second or third guy at the end position still be able to get to the quarterback and get home. And that really hasn't been what Texas has had over the last couple of seasons. So I think it's encouraging in the sense that they want to build this position up because this is a position that makes a lot of money in the NFL and it makes a lot of difference in a lot of ball games.
Another one from MJF here. We have 3 portals players still practicing with the team. You've reported that. It was confirmed. You reported that earlier this week. Then it was confirmed by Steve Sarkisian at his press conference. Casey Kane, Larry Turner Gooden, and also Sawyer Gorham Welch. All 3 of those guys still practicing with the team. So why couldn't Malik Murphy do the same? I think he needed to start having contact and focus on visiting elsewhere, having more integrated contact. But let's put it this way too. If Texas were to win the college football playoff, the first game, then they go to the next game. And then he has no time to actually even visit other schools. So I feel like it was a timing concern. The guy actually broke down a little bit when he had to transfer. So I don't think it wasn't a want to, it was a, hey, this is the way it has to be. You agree with that, CJ?
Yeah, no, it's extremely unfortunate for Malik. And I mean, we've seen it all over social media. We saw it on Twitter, just the outpouring of appreciation from the Texas team basically was, really telling in terms of how well they, received Malik Murphy, how much they appreciated being a teammate of his. It is unfortunate because this is one of those moments as a college athlete where you'll remember your run to the national title for the rest of your life, whether you win, whether you lose. That moment with your team that you've spent, the last 2 seasons with, it's one of those things that you'll forever be a part of. And it's really unfortunate that to be able to position yourself, and specifically for Malik Murphy, to have a brighter future, this is what the route has to be, to go visit while your team is still contending for a national title. So it makes sense, and it is unfortunate, but I think it goes to show the person that he is, that all of his teammates were essentially like, go get it. Like, we want you to go, be the best that you can be wherever that might be.
Let me ask you this. This is a good question from Chip Hale with Super Chat. What team did Washington play this year that most closely resembles Texas? Did they play an offense? Maybe Arizona from an offensive perspective, right? Yeah. Arizona scored 24 against them. Texas doesn't have a running quarterback, or Arizona didn't have a running quarterback. Oregon had a running quarterback, so I don't count them. Maybe an Oregon State. Yeah, kind of similar.
Yeah.
Just like Texas, Washington in the latter part of their regular season schedule had a series of 3 games right in a row that were 1-score games.
Yeah.
They beat Utah 35-28. The next week they beat Oregon State 22-20. And then the next week after that, they beat Washington State 24-21. So these teams, even though Washington is 13-0, they didn't have this. They didn't just run over everybody. And so keep that in mind. 35-28 versus Utah, 22-20 versus Oregon State, 24-21 in consecutive weeks to finish the regular season. They kind of limped into the Pac-12 championship game, although I will add I thought they played a dominant type game against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. All right, Ashton Holloman, I think he's asking about De'Alen Evans here, CJ. Is De'Alen announcing today? Why would it be for A&M after he already committed to them? Here's the reality. He could sign his paperwork today, and that could be it. He has paperwork, by the way, from both teams. So not only A&M, but also Texas. We will see exactly what he does. But look, he could just be confirming his commitment or affirming it, or he could be look, he could even, if he wanted to, decide not to sign anywhere and wait until February. Right now, I think it's a toss-up between the Longhorns and the Aggies. We'll see which way that goes as of right now. CJ, you have any feel for the De'Alen Evans commitment or what he is as a player? You want to add anything to that?
No, he's a very exciting prospect. We've talked about the athleticism, the explosiveness. We showed the clip earlier this morning on Coffee and Football of him dunking, doing the 360. That's one of those things that you look at for defensive linemen, especially. How well can you get off the ball? How well can you explode towards the line of scrimmage? That's what De'Alen Evans brings to the table. And, I thought his comments that were made public by 24/7 Sports the other day were pretty interesting. How often do you hear a kid committed to Texas call Oklahoma his dream school, or, vice versa? We heard that with De'Alen Evans. He basically came out and said, I'm committed to A&M, but man, I've always wanted to go to Texas. Like, that was my dream school since I was young, since I was growing up. I've always had an affinity towards watching that football team, that football program, for whatever the reason. I'm not committed there, but I love them, basically. That's my dream school. So that's interesting. That, kind of piques my interest, but at the same time, and Bobby, you've been around recruiting longer than I have, but sometimes you see those smoke screens, and sometimes you delusion is one of those things, and it's like being out in the desert and you see a body of water way out there, just get there and it's more piles of sand. So I don't know. I think it's one of those things that obviously very interesting and telling that he said it, but you can't take his that for to be set in stone, basically.
Yep. Here's a question from Russell. Is Savion Red in the portal? I had assumed he would move on given how stacked that running back room will be next year. He has not entered the portal. In fact, here are the guys that have entered the portal for Texas. Malik Murphy, the quarterback. Isaiah Nayor, the wide receiver. Larry Turner Gooden, the safety. Xavion Bryce, the cornerback. Jalen Catalon, the safety. Sawyer Gorham Welch, the offensive lineman. BJ Allen, the safety, and Casey Kane, the wide receiver. Couple of notes. I believe Allen and Bryce have both committed to North Texas. I believe that's accurate. Then you also have young man Casey Kane has committed to UNLV, which is the home currently of his former wide receiver coach, Brendan Marion, who is the offensive coordinator there. Of this group, we mentioned there are 3 that are still practicing with the team that CJ mentioned the other day. Casey Kane remains one of them, despite his commit to UNLV. He can still practice with the team. He just won't be eligible until next semester at UNLV. Then Sawyer Gorham Welch, a backup offensive lineman who has already graduated. So he's actually going to be a graduate transfer in the portal. And then Larry Turner Gooden, young man out of California originally, has decided to do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, Larry Turner Gooden is actually committed to San Jose State as well. So another one who has, plans to venture out elsewhere, but will be sticking with the team, as you mentioned, Bobby, and will be prepping for the bowl game this week, this upcoming week.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because we know today players had their final practice before breaking for Christmas. Then they'll come back on Christmas night. So Monday night, players will return to campus, and then the team leaves for New Orleans on the 27th. So they'll leave for New Orleans on Wednesday, get down there and try to get going and get used to the Superdome turf. I'm not sure exactly where Texas will be practicing, on the week leading up to it. But be aware of that. Players coming back Christmas night after having Christmas with their family, and then heading to New Orleans as a team on Wednesday. All right, this is the Longhorn Livestream on Friday afternoon. Each and every Friday we get together. It's sponsored by Andy Ludicky of MyPerfectFranchise.net. If you're looking to get into the franchise game in the new year, want to own your own business, make sure you give Andy Ludicky a shout. Andy at MyPerfectFranchise.net is his email address, or calling 404-973-9901. Andy has this great system where he takes you through a Q&A portion. Then he puts all the information into a computer, and then it spits out 4 or 5 big-time businesses that might be good for you and your family. It all depends on how much money you want to try to spend to get into it. Or if it's zero, maybe it's zero. If it's a lot, you can spend, maybe get into something different. Or if it's how much time you have. If you just want this as a side business for yourself, give them a shout at myperfectfranchise.net. All right, let's keep going here, CJ, if you don't mind. We got some time for some more questions and concerns. This is from Todd Lacey. How the Texas defense handles the first half loss of Derek Williams will largely determine how this game plays out, in my opinion. I have confidence in the Texas offense to move the ball. First of all, answer that question, but repeat what you said at the outset of this chat for people that did not hear it about Jahdae Barron and what he's doing this offseason, or this time between now and the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, with Derek Williams set to miss the first half of the Washington game due to targeting against Oklahoma State, Jahdae Barron, the star, that's fun to say, but the star defensive back for Texas has been getting reps at safety this week in practice. One of those rotational things. Should someone go down in that first half, Texas will need an emergency safety, and who better than the versatile Jahdae Barron to step in. Obviously, like you mentioned, Bobby has gotten reps and very valuable, meaningful game time this year at cornerback as well. So the versatility will be on display, and the football IQ is something that has obviously jumped off the page this year when watching Barron. A transition to safety is in the works and is one of those emergency factors that Texas is not willing to play around with Derek Williams sideline for the first half.
That all makes sense to me. All right, let's keep going here. We got more questions and more concerns, more thoughts. A lot of questions about scholarship numbers of late, CJ. You and I tried to put pencil to them yesterday and the day before. And really, I think that this is a fair question, but also an unfair question. I mean, I get where Chris is going. I get why people want to know. Chris asks, with today's numbers of commits, players in the portal, and players expected to leave, NFL or no eligibility, how close are we to the limit on number of scholarship players? The answer is they would be over right now, but there's going to be attrition that we know of. I mean, how else do you but we don't know how much. I mean, they could end up being under at the end of it.
Right.
And so that's where it's at, Chris. I mean, because you're talking about guys, JT Sanders. I give you an example. What if he comes back? Well, you got to have room for him. That's why they're not going after a portal tight end right now. They're waiting to see exactly what happens. And so you have a number of players that are like that. But even with Sanders, he's a 75-25 guy going to the pros, according to the person that would likely be his representation when he does go pro. So my point being, we can talk about this, and there are all kinds of permutations. I think that's a fair assessment. The reality of it is that we just, it is, for every answer, there's an if. If this happens, then that. And I think it's hard. What are your thoughts on this whole thing? I mean, clearly Sark and his guys, Billy Glasscock, the director of player personnel, have a steady handle on this, right, CJ?
Absolutely. And I think this goes back to, the exit interviews that Texas had with a few players, after the regular season finale against Oklahoma State. So that's one of those things that, they have an idea of who they expect to leave and come back. Obviously there is some fluidity when it comes to the NFL guys and what their decision might entail. Obviously Quinn Ewers, Ryan Watts is on the fence, JT Sanders, as you mentioned. But it's one of those things. I think at the end of the year, it's only fair to assume that 4 or 5 guys might also enter the portal. To depart for brighter, greener grass for their playing career. Texas is only at 9 portal entrants so far. When you look at Texas A&M, who's up to 15, Oklahoma's at 14. It makes sense for that kind of number to be what you expect for teams on a year basis, I would say. So to only be at 9, obviously still fighting for the bigger picture in a national championship, that's going to help these numbers. But at the conclusion of the season, there remains to be some movement, and that I think we can expect to see.
A lot of different pieces still yet to fall. I mean, I looked at it and I did a quick math, and I think there could be 5 to 6 more players in the portal, and then 5 to 6 more, or 3 to 5 more that declare for the NFL draft that are outside of the Xavier Worthy realm that actually are in Byron Murphy, who we already know are going pro, right?
Yep.
We'll see how that goes. So you're talking about 25 to 30 guys all in, or 20 to 30, 25 guys all in, on top of the 8 that have already left. So it's a strange number. Chris had another good question here. All of the position groups, in his opinion, have improved since Sark's year 1. But if you had to single out a specific position group most responsible for UT's improvement from 5-7 to 12-1, which group would it be? I think there are 2.
Yeah.
I think quarterback. Texas, I mean, no offense to Hudson Card and Casey Thompson, but they just didn't have a quarterback that first year with Sark. I mean, not one that could really run Sark's offense. Quinn has even improved from this year, right, from last year to this year. And then the other piece of it would be the defensive line. I mean, those guys, some of them just came of age, but they also got the edge position kind of solidified. That first year at edge, when Jacoby Jones went down, nobody else could play the position. And so Texas just got run on like nobody's business in the second half. What do you think? What are the position or 2 that you think of just come on so well, CJ?
No, I'm with you on both of those. The one that I would actually go with is the offensive line. A big reason why Texas didn't have, consistent play that first year at quarterback was because, they were getting planted in the dirt almost every play, I think it was the Iowa State game really late in that year when Casey Thompson goes down, and, maybe it was West Virginia. It was late in the season. Hudson Card is asked to come in for an injured Casey Thompson. He's already banged up as well with a bum ankle. And, the 2 guys, when you look at their jerseys, they're amongst the dirtiest on the roster. So the improvement from the offensive line helps the entire offense in my eyes. It certainly allows for a talented quarterback like Quinn to start thriving once he gets the hang of the speed of the game, as we've seen over the last 2 seasons as well. And we've obviously seen the progression and the consistency in the run game with Jonathan Brooks, Jaden Blue, CJ Baxter, that whole group this year, even with the departure of Roshan and Bijan from a year ago. That's maintained, at least to me, a pretty high standard of running the football for Texas.
I could add that. I would agree. I mean, you don't forget the first spring training for Sark, he had 9 offensive linemen on scholarship total. Couldn't even play a spring game, a real spring game because of that. All right, this one from River Art Society. Any word on Coach Choate's replacement? Anyone who can help recruit top 10 in-state kids? I've talked about Colton Swan, the linebackers coach at Utah. That was a name given to me prior about a week and a half ago. And then there's also others. Derek Johnson, don't be surprised if he doesn't get an interview. I really believe that. I mean, if he wants to get back in coaching, the former Longhorn All-American could be a great choice. There are other guys out there as well. I don't necessarily know, even though even though it's been posted on the website, the employment website that they're talking about, a linebackers coach and an assistant linebackers coach, essentially. I will say this. I don't think that Steve Sarkisian has to make this decision today. Now, he might try. He might try to make it in the new year after Texas is finished with the college football playoff. But I just don't see him thinking that he has to do that before. He didn't feel rushed to get Chris Jackson last year, CJ.
Right.
All right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Bobby, if you are Sarkisian and you are set to make this decision, obviously we've seen it with Chris Jackson and the really kind of the mentality of getting a NFL ready developer at the position rather than a star recruiter. Is linebacker another spot that you kind of see that same approach being valuable for that defense?
And it worked with Jeff Choate. I mean, nobody said Jeff Choate was going to be an A++ recruiter, but Sark and him tag teamed and got Anthony Hill, right? I think Sark sees his coaches as developers as much as recruiters. And I think that's really a big piece of it. I really do. And so while it's nice that you have Tashard Choice on your staff that clearly can do both, you know what I mean? I think that he's more concerned about the product he puts on the field. Yeah. And that's really where it comes. Those assistant coaches have a big piece of the puzzle there. And you know what? Another positive is the continuity on the staff that Sark's been able to create and cultivate. I really believe that. All right, a couple of more questions. We've got time for a couple more questions before we get going here this afternoon, December 22nd. Matthew Koshin, if we had to choose between Foster, Evans, and McKinley, who would we take? And I would just say, why do we have to choose? I mean, this is one of those, like, I know you want the opinions. I like them all differently. I like Evans as the best interior guy, like a true interior guy. I mean, he's 6'4.5", 260 pounds, can 360 dunk and toss the shot, but 60 foot. He is a Tavondre Sweat starter kit because that's essentially what Tavondre Sweat was in high school. So y'all can talk about all this other stuff, but you add 75, 100 pounds to him in a good way, you're talking about a potential first-round draft pick. Alex Foster is as raw gets out of Greenville, Mississippi. But as I was told by somebody that was on campus past weekend, he is going to be a huge person in 3 or 4 years, like big-time NFL huge. He's already 6'5.5", 255. Wow. He's got a chance. Dom McKinley is the highest rated of that group, and he is more like an Alfred Collins type of player. You agree with that, CJ?
Yeah, I think there's versatility to his game that you can slide from the 1 tech to the 3 out to the 5. And that's certainly something that we've seen utilized with Bo Davis in that defensive front with, even Tavondre Sweat at times lining up as a 7 tech all the way out there and kind of playing as that edge protect, even, quarterback contain guy, which is crazy to even mention. Bobby, I thought it was kind of funny. You mentioned, once you get these guys on campus, all you got to do is add a measly 100 pounds and they're a first rounder. But no, I think the development and the upside for all 3 is very encouraging. And as long as Texas adds at least 1, you have to be thrilled. You're already happy with what you have in this interior defensive line class. But adding 1 more of the guys that we just mentioned, and man, that's an all-time haul right there for Bo Davis.
All right, this one from Cotton coming in. What recruits waiting till February to sign would be numbers busters for UT? There's at least 2 of them that we know of, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, Dominic McKinley and Alex Foster of that group are pushing back. Terry Bussey also pushing back. That'll be something to watch, obviously, with Aaron Butler, kind of Texas making a late push there. What will happen if, he opts to go to Washington instead of Texas? Do they circle back around for Terry Bussey? I guess we'll see. But, right now, those are the names that come to mind. De'Allen Evans, it looks like a decision's coming, late this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they're going to have to wait for Evans if he keeps to what we're thinking right now. Just to recap, we got time for 1 or 2 more questions, but I want to recap what we announced at the start. CJ saying Jahdae Barron, the Texas star position, working out our cross-training, I guess, is the best way to say, at safety for the Washington game. Could just be precautionary because Derek Williams is out for the first half. Then also from a recruiting perspective, we're waiting on Aaron Butler, the wide receiver out of Calabasas, California. He's said to be looking at between Washington and Texas, Arizona. His dad didn't mention them yesterday. Some people still think they may be a little bit in it. I was told that Butler was 50-50 this morning between Texas and Washington. De'Allen Evans out of Longview Pine Tree, we're waiting for him. We expect his decision later this afternoon. Texas and Texas A&M going head-to-head. He's been an Aggie commitment for more than a year, CJ. So it's going to be a tough one for the Longhorns, tough hill for the Longhorns to climb, but perhaps they get there. And then we're also waiting for UTSA transfer portal prospect Trey Moore, a defensive end edge rusher that had 14.5 sacks for the Roadrunners. He's down to Texas and Alabama. We expect that decision maybe on over the weekend, but definitely before Christmas at this point in time. That's a recap of the news that we have for you guys as of right now. I'm going to ask this and try to see this. Mr. Talk Too Much had this to say. I like it. Going into the SEC, quality depth is a must. And guys have to understand that plays, we were talking about how many plays would Trey Moore take away from somebody. Plays have to be made when your number's called, because more than likely someone else on the team can get it done if you don't. Yeah, that's like a coach's dream, right? I mean, that's what he's describing is literally, if you can't get it done, someone else can, and survival of the fittest, that's typically the best teams. It's not when you can have pikers on the team just trying to ride it out and be done with it. You have to have producers on the best teams.
I mean, we're seeing it right now at the running back position. Your star running back Jonathan Brooks goes down to injury, and what's Jaden Blue and CJ Baxter do? Just step in and run for 100 yards apiece in back-to-back weeks. So I think right now that's kind of the gold standard in terms of talent and depth at a position at Texas currently. That's where Texas is striving to get to, and we're seeing it in pieces. Obviously, cornerback has been impressive this year in terms of the kind of emergence of some of these young guys, and obviously the addition of Gavin Holmes from the portal. So we'll see. But that, like you said, I think that's a coach's dream, and that's exactly what you strive to do in terms of each position on the field.
All right, this is going to be the last question of the day, of the afternoon. Emmanuel Villafranca, what 2 to 4 freshmen do you predict will get some playing time next season? I think it's going to be more like 10 to 15. We'll get some playing time because of special teams. But 2 or 4 primaries, in your opinion, CJ?
I think, I've mentioned Jelani McDonald a lot. I'm not sure where he fits on that.
No, I think he's talking about true freshmen.
Oh, true freshmen.
Okay. Guys just signed.
Okay, then
Emmanuel, I'm gonna make it that, even if that's not what you meant, bud. Well, 2 to 4 true freshmen that just signed.
Yeah, no, off the top of my head, I mean, Colin Simmons will be in a rotation somewhere on the defensive end line. It just makes sense. He gets to the quarterback. One of those guys who, regardless of size, has the speed, has the athleticism, has the bend to get to the quarterback, and Texas needs that. Obviously, we talked about Trey Moore taking snaps away from guys. Colin Simmons is another. Xavier Phil-Sami, I think we've both, kind of come around to this one, is Texas in that secondary, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of production departing, and a lot of guys already have departed. There's going to be room for Texas to rotate in at safety, and Xavier Phil-Sami off the jump is that number one guy that comes to mind to make me think, all right, he's got a shot. And then obviously Ryan Wingo as well. I think Texas, like we said, losing production, losing guys out of the rotation, there will be an opportunity for him to jump in right away and see some snaps, see some targets. I don't think he'll be a starter immediately. I think that's a hard thing to do in a Sarkisian offense. Xavier Worthy, obviously one of the rare ones who had to do it almost out of a necessity more than, is he ready per se? Obviously did pretty well, but Ryan Wingo is certainly in that conversation as well to get on the field very early.
All right. I went with Wingo, Phil-Sami, Simmons, and Alex January.
Love it.
Those are mine. I think that Texas needs one of these young defensive linemen to be ready to play. All right, that's going to do it for this afternoon's live stream by On Texas Football, brought to you, folks, by myperfectfranchise.net. We appreciate Andy Ludicky and his team and their ongoing sponsorship of On Texas Football. All right, CJ, drive safely to Dallas, my man. Everybody else that's getting in the car or leaving work late before the holiday weekend, we appreciate you. Please be safe out there. For CJ Vogel, I'm Bobby Burton. Merry Christmas and hook 'em.